Okay, I think I got the stream going, which is a lot faster than last time I did this. Which is good. Very good. Okay, I'm going to try and invite a couple folks. Okay, let's get some code on the screen. Let's see, I'm going to open up the project that we were working on last time. This was... where was it? I should have kept it all open, but, you know, I didn't, because why would I? That. Not there. Not there. Yeah, there it is. That. So I can go to my test directory and open that homepage file. And let's see. Just a few more minutes to get set up. I should have gotten set up to start it, but I didn't. Can you go? Ah, where'd it go? Oh gosh. Yeah, there it is. Okay, boom, right there. And I don't know what that's about. I don't really care about that. Oh, that's some Spectre.js stuff. Might actually jump into that at some point, but let's see. So here we have our basic WebdriverIO test. And what I want to get into today, we took this screenshot at the end of last time to check that the image was taken. And if we open that image up, just so you can see, nope, not that one. If I can learn to copy and paste, there we go. And show that on the screen. It actually has a screenshot of the page. Now, one of the things with this screenshot is you can't actually compare it. Like if you were going to take a new screenshot and you wanted to compare it to an old one, you know, this saved screenshot's not actually going to do anything to meet that effect of comparing the two. There's a service out there called Selector that I might get into in another episode, but basically you can upload images to it, and then from there it will do the comparison and kind of track that data. It's kind of pretty neat, but I'm still struggling to figure out how to upload the images. I can do everything else. I can send the right data. I just can't get the images in place though. So I don't know. So what I want to look at today is WebdriverCSS, which is an add-on to WebdriverIO that allows you to kind of do this comparison stuff. So let me open up a browser. There we go. Okay, sorry, I had to do a little bit of admin stuff. Okay, this is WebdriverCSS, and it's kind of a plugin for WebdriverIO. You add it on to WebdriverIO. You can do it through requiring WebdriverCSS and then initializing it. I believe there's another way that we can do that. If I jump into the WebdriverIO website, let's see if there's a service available for it. I'm not entirely sure. One important thing before we start with all of this is to say that it's not the official version 1.1.10 isn't compatible with WebDriver 3.0, which is a major version behind it. We are using 4.0. So what I'm hoping to do in this one is kind of show you what it looks like, how you can get it running with 3.0, because you can actually have it run with 3.0. You just have to install it a special way. And then once that's installed, I want to show you how to, oh man, what was I going to say? Some other ways that you can use WebDriver 4.0 with the 3.0 library. So what I wanted to see is if there is in here nothing from the services. Just jumping into their examples, trying to see if they have anything on WebdriverCSS. I don't think they do right now. Okay. If you're not familiar with visual regression testing, what it does is it takes a screenshot of your page and compares the before and after, and then will give you a diff if there's a difference here. So the difference here is that the text goes off to 2 lines instead of 1 line, and that pushes the button down. And so everything that you see in pink is part of the diff. It's part of the failure in the 2 images, or the difference between the 2 images. And what's great about that is you can have your test fail if there is a failure. So here in their example code, they take a screenshot. They're actually taking screenshots of different elements, and then they're doing an assertion to check to see if there was an error thrown during taking that screenshot, and then if it's within this mismatch tolerance. Mismatch is the amount of difference between the two images that's allowed. So I think by default it's 30% or something. Let's see, we can see it in mismatch percentage. Okay, so by default I think it's at 0, and so any difference is going to throw an error. But if you want to increase that and allow, like, maybe your fonts render a little bit differently, you can increase that percentage and say as long as it's within 5%, we're not going to fail it, and go from there. So it's a pretty neat little tool, and let's try it out. And we're going to do that first by let's see, making sure we have Graphics Magic installed already. So pop that open, and I'll just run this command. And I'm pretty sure it's already installed, and I hope so because it takes a little bit to install it. Yeah, so it's already installed. You can actually check this as well by doing Graphics Magic, I think. No, GM, I think that's it. Nope, sorry. That's a git command that I have running. There are ways to install it. So what I'm going to have to do is install a custom version of WebdriverCSS and a custom version of WebdriverIO, because we're on the 4.0. Oh man, there's something up with my... Oh, you go away. There we go. Okay, sorry. So much flashing on the screen. Getting my terminal set up and everything. I was saying that there's a custom version of WebdriverIO that we need to install, not the latest. We have to do 3.0, and then a custom version of WebdriverCSS that we need to install, not 4.0. And to do that, let's see. Go into pull requests, and in here, trying to see. I know at some point there's... Okay, so this is the branch that currently works with 3.0. So if I jump back into my WebdriverIO, I'm actually going to jump out of this directory, make a new one. call it WebdriverCSS. Jump into there. Oops. And I'm going to initialize a blank repository so I can save my dependencies. And I'll just have it be the default stuff for all that. And then I'm going to do install save dev WebdriverIO at 3. So this is going to install the latest version at 3, and actually I'm going to do 3.4.0. I think there's a reason for this. It's one of those things where you ran across a bug and you had to go back to a previous version, or you had to do something weird, and you can't quite remember why exactly, but you do remember that there was an issue there. So I'm going to do 4.0, and then I'm going to install WebdriverCSS with this specific tag, v2 beta. And if we go into our code and look at the branches, oh, you see this is the branch. And I think if you go into the releases, you'll see the release as well. Yeah, you'll see the release right here. So that's the release we want. And so I'll jump back into my terminal, paste that in, and when I install this, it should install both of those. Last time we looked at running WebdriverIO through the test runner, and that was pretty cool, but that is only really available for wait, no, the test runner did exist in 3. I think it was new to 3, and I wonder if we can use that again here. I'll have to remember if we can or not. I'm pretty sure, yeah, pretty sure we can. So I'm going to let that install. Okay, so that's installed. I'm going to edit my package.json file to set test equal to WDIO. And if I do npm test, so if you didn't see it last time, this is an npm script. So it's throwing an error. Let's see, add config file requires file path. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Already running into issues. I bet my version of Node is too recent, possibly. Let me double check something. So, I go into here, and then I'm doing something off screen. Okay, so Micah Godbolt and I wrote a book, or a short ebook that's free on the internet if you want, called Getting Started with Visual Regression Testing and WebdriverIO. And in it, I go through the steps to how to install WebdriverCSS. So yeah, you see here, we do this 3.4.0, and looks like that's a little bit different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go back to my terminal and just get rid of my node modules again, just wipe it. And then come back and run this command. I think that was a little bit different. So possibly the right version of WebdriverCSS didn't install. Maybe it did. To beta RC. v2.0 beta RC1, 2.0 beta RC1. It's pretty much the same thing. I bet it just ignores it. So yeah, maybe this is one of the issues, is that it wants an older version of Node. I haven't actually installed WebdriverCSS in a while because it's gotten kind of out of date. But let's see if I can run npm test again. No, it doesn't like that. So I think what I will do, oh, you know what? I wonder if I have to pass in the command file. Let's see. Nope, that's not it. Oh. So I don't have the command configuration file set up yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run WebdriverIO and run config. Okay, I want to test. I'll use Mocha just in test. I'll use dot, silent, yes, and no, we'll do, let's do WebdriverIO. Okay, now let's try and run our test. Cross our fingers, hopefully this works better. Okay, that's actually better. It's a different error basically saying that we can't connect to the Selenium server. I will go ahead and start a Selenium server the easy way. Let's see if I have Selenium Standalone installed. I do. Let's see if I start it. Perfect. So Selenium Standalone is an NPM module that you can install using Selenium. NPM install Selenium Standalone. And you can install it globally if you want to run it from the command line just like that, or you can install it locally to your module if you want to write like a NPM script that can do that. WebDriver 4.0 offers a service to do this, but 3.0 doesn't, or 3.4 that we're using doesn't. So it is what it is. The next thing I'm going to do is create a new test. So I will go and I'll make a directory called tests. Is that what it was? Test. I'll use the right command. CD into test, and then let's not CD. Oh, jeez. And I'll call this WebdriverCSS.js. Okay, and that opened up off screen. So here's our test. It should load a page. Oops. Okay, we're going to describe a basic test. This is Mocha syntax that we're using. So that's the Mocha unit test library. And then we're going to say it should load the page. Okay, and then we are going to return the browser .init, and then URL, just the base URL, and then we will pause for 2 seconds just so that I can show you what the screen looks like, and then we're going to end it. One thing you notice different about all of this is that I'm having to init the page and end the page, or end the browser. And that's because this is WebDriver 3.0, and in 3.0 you need to do that. In 4.0 you don't. So just something to pay attention to. If you did watch the last Wednesday's stream, I didn't have to do this. The other thing I didn't have to do was this return. And that's because in 4.0 they introduced this sync method in the configuration file that, well, not sync method, the sync functionality to where it will run the test in like a synchronous style instead of this promise-based style. So because this is asynchronous in 3.0, you have to return the browser object, which is just a promise. Otherwise, it's going to finish the test before it actually runs the test. So let's see if I'm right about all of this test working, and just try it out. Somewhere. There it is. It's off screen. Oops. And I may have done this completely wrong. I don't know. I think I did, because it's not actually loading anything. So I did something wrong. That's fine. Let's see. I'm going to go back to the thing that we wrote and see what it is that I did wrong. Okay, write your first regression test. Yeah, we did the install. Write some tests. So this is our options. Let me see something on my shell. Debug applications. I need to connect to. So there's an error that got thrown. It's having some issues connecting to Firefox. Ooh, I wonder if this is an old version of, or a newer version of Firefox. On some of the newer versions of Firefox, when you run them, they have issues trying to connect. So in that manner, I'm going to change my configuration file and look at, I'm going to change it to go to Chrome. Because if you have, I don't know if this is technically the case right now, but I know in the past, if you have the wrong version, or a more recent version of Firefox, it's going to throw a fit. It'll actually do exactly what it did, which is pop up the browser but not actually do anything. So let's go ahead and try this with Chrome and see if I can get that working with Chrome. Okay, so you saw that it popped up the Chrome window, but it's saying it can't find the module Mocha. That's because I got spoiled and I got used to WebDriver 4.0 or 4.x installing the Mocha adapter and everything for me. So now I need to install Mocha myself, and I probably also need to install Chai because Chai is the assertion library that's being used here. I think, let's see, Mocha. Yeah, I will need to install Chai, but it's not actually getting loaded by WebdriverIO. That's something that I'm going to load in here when I get to it. But I don't need to get to it yet because it's not there yet. Okay, got that installed. Let's try our test one more time. Browser name Chrome. So my configuration file is off. Let's see what I messed up. I probably didn't close browser name Chrome. Yeah, that's right. What do you mean? Left that out. That's great. Cool. Okay. I see all the little things that can trip you up here. It's just ridiculous. There we have our Chrome window, and it should load our page. It did not. If not in a new session, please end your current session first. Oh, I don't need it. I don't need to do this. I lied. You know, I'm just a big fat liar. So be it. Sorry to say that. Fantastic. Okay, so it's loading the page is loaded, it's pausing for 2 seconds, and now it's shutting down, and we have the pass. Oh, finally got the basic test down using 3.0. Just trying to remember how to do everything. So you don't need init, you don't need end. The test runner does that for you automatically. I was wrong when I said before that it doesn't do that automatically for you. What I was thinking is that if you write in the style defined here, yeah, see how you have to do if you're not running it through the test runner, you have to init it yourself and end it yourself. So anyway, let's get in to WebDriver CSS, and first thing I'm going to do before I do that is look at this. There is an update that happened 3 hours ago. Isn't that interesting? More hacking. Oh no, that was a while back. Somebody mentioned that this compatibility fix was open. Maybe I'll try this out. You know, why not try this? I'll show you how you can run that after we get through the basic stuff. But that's actually a fairly small little update to make. Just some things with the way that we do graphics magic. It looks like it. So I'll see if I can try this out when we get there. And you know what, I bet beta RC1, maybe there's more changes. This is just a little one in there. So Luke Keller sent that along, so thanks, Luke. Okay, now let's write some tests. I'm going to jump back into here. So here's, as part of that course, it just kind of goes through the basics of WebdriverIO, but I want to skip past that and get to WebdriverCSS. And now we need to, let's see, set up WebDriver CSS. So this is, in this one, we're not using the test runner. We're using the base. So how do we get WebDriver CSS running with the test runner? And the truth is, I completely forgot, and we'll need to see how we do that. Examples, let's see, WebDriver CSS browser stack. Yeah, so this is not using the test runner, and I know there's a way to do this using the test runner. I just need to, oh, that's how we do it. We pass our options in via the configuration file. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so instead of passing in the configurations in here, if I jump into that configuration file that I had, and I search WebDriver CSS, here we have plugins that we can add. So I'm going to uncomment this, and then I'll comment this back out, because we don't want that. But here are our WebDriver CSS options. So pretty integrated into the test runner. We have the screenshot route that we want to take the screenshots, and so I'm just going to call this baseline. And then failed comparison route is going to be baseline /diffs. And this is something that I do to keep the images closer together, so that there's a baseline folder and then there's a baseline diffs folder, so diffs inside of baseline. It's kind of nice you can have your diffs in there. The other thing you could do is, I think you can just keep those both as baseline and then all your images are in the same folder. It's kind of neat if that works. So let's see, I've set my WebDriver CSS up. I've got a lot of screen widths. This is all the different sizes that it's going to take the pictures at. I'm just going to do one size for now because, well, let's do two. I just don't want it to take too much time when we're running these tests, but I'll do two sizes, and it'll actually be 320 and 1024. Okay, now I'm going to jump back into here. Instead of pausing, I'm going to do the WebDriver CSS command, and this is where we have some fun. So this will just be the home page we're taking a picture of, and then we pass in options, and in not an object, an array of objects. So each item in this array that we pass in is going to be an element that we want to take a screenshot of. And we define that by saying elem, and then we pass in the selector. So I want to pop up the WebdriverIO homepage, and what are we going to take a picture of? Let's take a picture of this whole header area. So h1 class header. So I'll grab that. The other way I could do this is do copy selector and paste that in. You see it's not my favorite selector there. So instead I'm just going to do header. So a class of header here. And that should take a picture of the header element, and then I need to pass in a name. So I'll do this as site title. And I think this name actually gets passed to the image that's taken. And this is the basics of what you need to do for your WebDriver CSS call, I think. Let's try it out. Probably messed something up. Oh, we'll see. Loads the page. Takes a screenshot. Yep, so it changes the size of the browser. It actually takes a screenshot of the entire page, so that, and then it gets the element, it trims that down and gets the element from there. So I think what happened is it just took too long for that test to run, so our timeout was exceeded. So I'll jump into my Mocha options, and I don't know if you saw last time, I think I went over this, how to set that timeout a little bit higher. So I'll set it to 99 seconds, which should be enough to get our pictures taken. WebDriver CSS, it does have to do image processing, so it does take a little bit longer, so you are going to have to increase your timeout, especially if you're doing several screenshots at once, or you're doing a lot of different resolutions. So okay, it's loading. Take a screenshot of the entire page. Then it's going to change the width again, and then it's going to take a screenshot of this entire page. And we'll be able to look at those screenshots in just a second. Perfect. So that did it. I just want to show you, this is the Selenium output, and you can see it's running some scripts in here that do the screenshot. So basically, it's WebdriverCSS is telling Selenium to run this command in the browser. And so this command goes in and it sets some translate information, some page offsets. So it'll take a screenshot and then it will run a script to change the position on the page that you're on, take another screenshot, run again, and it just keeps doing that until it reaches the bottom of the page. So that's what that does. I just wanted to mention that in case you're curious about how it does all of this. Okay, so let's jump into our baseline folder. And you can see we've got 4 images here. We've got the home page. This is the full image. So if I did open baseline and then pass that in, this is actually the full image that was taken. This isn't going to be used for any regression tests. It's just used for getting the other elements from. And then if I open this image, this is what's actually going to be used for that baseline. So I'll jump into there. And here's the image that was taken at 1024. And then we could do the same thing, opening this image. So that's what it looked like on the 320 screen. So pretty neat kind of thing that it did that. Now I'm trying to think how I want to break this, because this is not a local site. This is an actual website that will cause that I can't edit live. So what I'm going to do is I could go to a new page and try and take a picture, but that header's not going to be there. I think what I could also do is possibly change this text or change the style on the page. So I'm going to jump into the API and see what I can do for text. I think I can set HTML. Let's see what text says. Get text. So I can get the text. What's element ID text do? That returns the visible text. Set value, I always thought set value would work for anything, but the truth is it doesn't, because it has to be a input element. So it won't work for like H1 tags or things like that. I think the other thing I can do is HTML. There's get HTML. Oh, let's see. Apologies while I look this up. So you can get all this stuff. Text. Well, I'll tell you what I will do is ignore this specifically, because I don't really want it. I'm trying to see if there's something dynamic on this page that we could use. I could take a screenshot of this drop down. Let's see, get started. Trying to think if there's anything else that I want to take a screenshot of. I think what I am going to do instead is just go to the API page. So I'll just load the API page and then take a screenshot of this as my baseline with nothing in, and then I'll enter some text and take a screenshot of it so you can see what that looks like. So let's close all that stuff out. Go back to our test and search box, and then we're going to change our element. We'll say this is the search, and we need the URL is going to be updated to api.html, and then the other thing we need to do is get this selector. So it just has a name of search. I'll just do that. Search bar input. Yeah, there's only one input. So search bar input. Save that, and I'm going to run my test again. Loads the API page, takes a screenshot of the entire page. Cool. Next up, we're going to set the value in this selector. And because I'm using the same selector, I will just variable selector, create a variable for it. That way I don't have to repeat myself. Set value of the selector to low. And then I'll pass that selector in here. Let's go ahead and see what that looked like, that baseline. Open baseline. And you see it's named search box, so that follows the title or the value you put in for WebdriverCSS, and then the name of the element. So search box, and then how wide the screen was when it took the picture, and then the name of the element. Or here it's the name of the WebdriverCSS overall function that you called, and then the specific element that you're going to test. I'll show you multiple elements in just a second. And the other thing I'm going to do after this is I'll probably turn that extra width off so that it doesn't take quite as long. But let's see what this looks like. Okay, there's our search box. So I'm going to run the test again. And we're going to see it create a diff, because it's now going to have text in it that says hello. And it's not going to have that basic search. So let's see, there's my hello. Now it's taking the screenshots and it's going to complain about it, but you're going to see that the test actually still passes. So it still says that it's passing, but if we open this baseline folder, there is a diff of our image in there. So let's open that diff and show you what that looks like. Here, you see all the pink is where it's different from what it used to be. So it used to say search and stuff. We can jump into look at the baseline, which is this one, or we can look at the regression as well. And so yeah, here's the baseline image, here's the regression. You see it has our text in there. And let's see if that's the diff between the two. So pink is basically anything different between those two images. Okay, so it took a picture. It shows us that we have an error with it. If we wanted to accept it, there's a couple different ways that we could do that. We could just remove all the images in here and rerun our test. It'll recreate the baseline. There is another way that you can do in your WebdriverCSS config to say update baseline, I think, and you set that to true, and so when you run it in that instance, it's going to update all your baseline images with whatever you have. Let me show you what that looks like. Update baseline, yeah. So the default is false, but it will update it if it's still failing. So it's a nice, easier way of doing that update. The other thing you can do is just manually go in there and rename, get rid of this image, get rid of that image, and then rename regression to baseline, and it'll work there. So that's another thing you can do. Let's go ahead, I'll set update baseline to true. I'm going to remove that, well, I'll remove this one because it probably takes longer to run the smaller screenshot than it does the wider one, just because it's so much taller. And then the other thing I'm going to do is, let's take another image. And here I will set the element to be, let's see, yeah, what do I want to do? Okay, element to a different element. So let's take a picture of the menu bar. Okay, and nav, and let's run it. That's our API page. It says hello, and now it's taking the screenshot. So it only has to take the screenshot once. It's not going to do it twice because it's already grabbed the page. And then if we go into this baseline folder, you see it has a search box nav and a search box search in there. And then it also, this one, it just has one search box overall image because it only needs to take one image. It gets the position of the element inside the image and then crops it using Image Magic. That's why you had to get Image Magic installed. So you see it's still failing, so I'm going to try running this one more time and see if it gets rid of that for me because I have update baseline set to true. Let me make sure that I actually did use the right value for that update baseline. Probably shouldn't mess with it while you're taking pictures. Yeah, that's correct. Okay, let's see what it did. It actually threw a regression. I wonder why. Let's see. Doesn't look like there was an actual regression. Wonder if, oh, right, I need to look at the diff. What's the diff? Search, 320, search, 1024. Oh, has the nav. I think this was the, yeah, sorry, this was the old regression. I guess it hasn't updated it. I don't really use that update baseline setting just because it can be, oh no, look, it's this baseline is now up to date. It has the hello. So it looks like it did update the baseline image. It just didn't get rid of these images, which is not terrible. I'm just trying to see like the dates that everything was edited. See if I can get any information from there. So here, let's see, 1646. Search. Okay. Anyway, I don't know what I'm doing. So I guess that was like the created time and not the edited time. Anyway, it updated the baseline. And that's cool. So, nice. Now, the only other thing I want to show for this is how, oh my gosh, so many images. It still shows that it's passing. You see that it's passing even though it failed the test. And that's when we get into this callback, this final callback that WebdriverCSS takes that allows you to assert whether something passed or failed. So if I jump back into the WebdriverCSS page, you see I've got assert in here. This is requiring the node assert library. I actually got chai, so I'll do chai is equal to require chai, and then I'll just do yeah. So I'm going to load the expect library from chai, and then I'll say expect error to be null. So I'm expecting error not to have anything in it. If it does, then something went wrong with the screenshot. And then I will just console log out the shots here, shots object, which in theirs they call it response, but I call it shots because I think shots is a little bit clearer. So I'll take that, take a screenshot, and I'm going to get rid of this hello because I want it to actually fail. So I'll come back into here and run my test. Expected undefined to be null. So what I did was I expected error to be null when really it should be undefined. I think I can do that. I'm going to log the shots first so at least we say that. And then the other thing I'm going to do is get rid of that so it's a little bit simpler. And I'm actually going to set that hello to hellos, because by setting that, it actually doesn't take as much time to take the picture because it's a shorter page. Because when you search in the search box, it will filter all your results. And so I'm going to get it to filter the results and then take the screenshot, so it doesn't take quite so long to do this. You see it shortened it up and everything, so it doesn't have to scroll all that much. It just scrolls a little bit. Okay, so it's still expected undefined to be null. I'm just going to, oh man, I thought I moved that up. Darn. Let's see, what do they do in their test? They assert if error. Well, to expect error to not be. Does that work? I don't know if that works. I'm just going to skip that because we're running a little low on time. Let's run this test one more time for now, and then I'll show you what the shots looks like. Alright, now it's taking the screenshots. We should get some actual data out of this one. Excellent. So now we've got some actual data. That shots is a object, and inside of the object it has keys for each of the values you define on it. So here I've got this search key that matches my search object. Inside of there, it's going to have an array of the different widths that you took. So if you had this set to like 320, then in here you would have two big objects of content that would have this information in it, which is the baseline path. So this is the path to the baseline image that it used for comparison. This is the regression, this is the diff, this is the message that came across, so it's basically saying that the mismatch tolerance was exceeded, and this is what the mismatch percentage was. There's also, outside of mismatch percentage, you can check to see if it was the exact same image, same dimensions, and is within mismatch tolerance. So what we're going to do is, in our test, we're going to say that we want to expect shots.search. So we're going to get to that object. We're going to take the first result from there, and I'm going to do it correctly. Dot is within mismatch tolerance there to be true. So this is going to check that inside of our shots object, we have a search property. That property has an array, and the first value of that array is an object that has a property of is within mismatch tolerance, and we're going to expect this to be true, and it's going to fail because it's not true. So if I save that and run my test, it should fail for me. No, it passed. Why did it pass? Why? Oh, because it is within the mismatch tolerance, and you know why? Because it updated my baseline. Because it failed last time, it said I had update baseline set to true, and so it just updated the baseline there. And now when I ran it again, it was like, hey, those baselines are the exact same. But one thing I can show you in this is that the message changes here, the dimensions, and is within mismatch tolerance is true. Let's run it again and just call that like a planned failure. Okay, now it failed. You can see it's actually failing. Expected false to be true. That's not the best thing we could do. So in Shy, or not the best error message, but it's at least an error message, and that works really well for like CI/CD systems. So if you want to take pictures before you do an error, if you want to take screenshots before you do a deploy or something and do your visual regression testing in that, you can do it. So that is the basics of all of this. There's actually a lot that we can do as far as the configuration goes inside of WebDriver CSS. We can set the name, the element, we've already done that. We can set a defined width and height and positions. So instead of passing elements, you can pass in a specific position and everything. You can also exclude certain elements. So if we don't want like you're taking a screenshot of a fairly large section of the page and something in it changes all the time, you can exclude it from it, and I think that's going to... There's a difference between exclude, hide, and remove. Remove will hide it, will get rid of the element via display none, so that's going to like make it collapse around it. That's really good if you have dynamic links. I've used it in the past for dynamic links, where the link gets generated based off of some data, and the length of that link and the content of the link is always different. And so I really need to set it to display none, because even if I had it as exclude or hide, so I think exclude puts a black bar over it. Hide will use visibility hidden to hide the element, and then remove uses display none. So if I did the hide or the exclude, the length of that black bar or the length of the space would change, so I need to remove it. And then ignore can be used to ignore color differences, things like that. So some nice options here. I think the other thing that's not mentioned in this option is that you can pass in the screen width to your, at least I think you can, if I remember correctly, you can pass in a custom screen width to the image that you want to take. So that's kind of nice if you have some images or some elements that are responsive, and at a certain breakpoint you want to test it, and then all the rest you don't really care about, they pretty much stay the same. So this will override whatever you have set in your WebDriver CSS option. Okay, this is what exclude looks like with the black. Same thing here. So this is using X points to define like a polygon, compared to elements to define certain elements to put a black thing over. And let me see if there's anything else worth showing. Okay, so the last thing I want to get into is, let's see if we can do this using Compatibility Fix. So I'm going to jump into this specific let's see, sorry. This specific branch is what I'm going to jump into. How do I get there? Oh, does that, well, I mean the branch is on that repo. Okay. So I want to jump into this beta R1 branch that he has. And the next thing I'm going to do is use that branch for my NPM path. I jump in here. So instead of using this value, I'll get rid of that. I'm actually going to pass in the URL, and I think that'll work. Let me see, npm install from GitHub. Npm install Harball. Let's see if there's anything else. GitHub repo name. I think I can do GitHub repo name and the version. Yeah, so pound is the version that I want. Npm install WebdriverIO commit or commit hash. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this line. Actually, I'm going to copy this out. GitHub user project. Okay. So what I need is that. And I don't need that. I need the project, and then the ID is beta RC1. That's the name of the branch that I'm testing. Correct? Beta-RC1. Beta-RC1. So if I come in here and I do npm install, this should work. Okay, so it looked like it did grab the, well, I don't know. Maybe it didn't. But we're going to test this another way. I'm going to jump over to the material from last week, and I'm going to install this on that side of things, because this is my WebDriver 4.0 version that I already have installed. So it still says that it used that beta RC1. Okay, I think that's okay. It used the specific hash from that commit from this repo. So in theory, that worked. And I'm going to go jump into my configuration package for the repo from last time. And let's see if there's WebdriverCSS in here. There is WebdriverCSS already defined. Oops. And I just want to make sure this works. So I'm going to do this lines, save it, and ignore that. I'm going to open up homepage, because this was the test that we had written last time. I'll get the title, and then I will do my browser WebDriver CSS call. And let's see. I can pass in this selector. No, I'm going to pass in this selector. Yeah, this is what I'll do. I'm going to not do it on this one. I'm only going to run this single test to save some time. I'll get rid of this screenshot, and I'll say selector. I'll call this search, and I need to pass in an array lm of the selector. Basically what we did for all the other stuff. So this is like the input box. So it's going to take that picture, set the value, and then we're going to go ahead and take the picture again. Search with input. And I'm not using spaces because this is going to be in file names, and throwing spaces into file names can be a little messy. So I'm not going to worry about that. We could also move this into a variable if we wanted to, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. And let's see if this works. I don't know if it's going to work or not. I'm guessing it's not going to work just because it's a lot of things that I tried changing. And I think it's also running in Firefox. So let's see if that has an issue. Yeah, it looks like I had that Firefox issue again. And I think that's because this Selenium server is out of date. So it may not have the latest stuff. So here's what I'll do. I'll kill that. I'll do, because before I ran it using the package JSON. Oops. we created a script. Oh, I thought maybe you didn't. I'm pretty sure I used the node modules in Selenium Standalone. Yeah, I did it that way. So when I first did this, we were using the global install, which is different from the local install. So now I need to get back to my other directory because I didn't do that right. All right, used the wrong window. Okay, let's try this. Come on, Firefox. No. Nope. Nope, doesn't want to work. And I guess I must have updated it or something. Let's kill that. Pop Firefox back open. Close that. Jump into here. We don't want to use Firefox. We'll use Chrome. And run the test again. That looks better. It's actually doing something. Goes to the API, doing all these commands, taking a picture. Good. For the most part, timeout exceeded because it takes a long time, so let's up that timeout. Because this is the other configuration file that I had. Let's try it again. So you see it's running that screenshot command. That's actually the same command that we used in the last episode, or not last episode, last time we used screenshot. This WebdriverCSS uses screenshot to get the screenshots. It just does a lot more than that. Looks like it's actually kind of working. It's at least taking the screenshots. It set the value, now it's taking another screenshot. That, I mean, that worked. Let's jump into baselines. There's a baseline in there. So search input box, open that up. I wonder if I can just open baselines. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so here's baseline with input. Nice. Baseline without. So this is just the base image. So you see it actually took two base images. It took the one without input, the first one, and then the second one with input. And then here's the baseline without the input. So let's do one last test. All I'm going to do is check to see that it will fail this second image. And I'm going to make it fail both. And it's not actually going to fail the test because I don't have my assertion in here. So I've got to do my own assertion in there. There's, while that's running, I'll show if I can bring it up. WebdriverCSS assert is a small little tool that I think that I wrote. Visual Regression Testing CSS assert. So this is just a way of doing a common assertion. You would install it, same way you install chai or mocha or whatever, and then instead of passing in your custom function and having to define a custom function, it will go in, you pass in the assert shots function, and it's just a reference to this function that it uses assert instead of chai. It checks to see if the error is there, and then it does a smart loop through the shots. So you don't have to define the specific shot that you're looking for. It looks through all the keys in there, and then checks the element, and then it goes for each resolution. It will use that. So that's WCSS assert if you want to use that. And if you want to fork it and make like a chai assertion as well, you can do that. Okay, so it finished our test, and it says that it passed because it doesn't have that real assert in there. But it did actually catch the regressions, which is totally awesome. Here you see, let's see, that's the regression image, so that's with the debugs. And then this is the diff. You can see that pink where the line used to be, and then the new S and the new line. And then the same thing goes here where it actually has text in it. It's a placeholder. So it looks like this pull request is pretty good to use for our testing, and works pretty well with WebDriver CSS. Now, I mean, there's a ton to WebDriver CSS. So maybe exclude doesn't work, or some of the hide property doesn't work, something like that. But for the most part, it looks like this is getting pretty close to being ready to go. I'd love to see something happen with this, and at the very least, you can at least use this branch or this. Let's see, if I jump into my package.json. This information, and I'll go ahead and save this and upload it to the same place that I had last time. I'll post it in the comments if you want to grab this specific value in order to have WebDriver CSS working on the latest version of WebdriverIO. So that's pretty cool, and pretty excited to see that we have an option for 4.0, and I think I'm going to need to update my book to use that. Maybe, I'll see. I actually probably need to do a lot of updates to this in order to use like the test runner, because it's a lot more capable and things like that. But if you are interested in that book, it's at, if I show this, at learn.visualregressiontesting.com. It's just a little email course that Micah Godbolt and I put together. Totally free, 6 days. You just go through, kind of learn the basics of visual regression testing and the basics of WebdriverIO as well. So that's super cool, and yeah, just enter it. It's free. Stuff like that. And then, since if you did listen to all this, I do have a course out there that's a paid course if you do want to pay for stuff that goes into more WebdriverIO stuff, just deeper in, getting into chai and assertions. And so if there was something in this, like I briefly covered the configuration file the other day, and I talked about sync mode. I go into all that in a lot more detail on this course, but it is paid for because it takes a lot of time to put those videos together. Even though they're super short, like a 3-minute video takes me about 2 hours to make. Just because I want it to be really quick, I want you to save as much time as you can, not having to watch 40 minutes of this just to get a single thing. I want to really get some compact, easy, quick to learn stuff for you out there. And it's still in development. Next up is the pause command. You can actually see this debug command on YouTube for free. I thought it was worth it. And then I've got a ton more modules planned, and part of it being in development is that it's an early access price, so it's only $97 instead of $197. This is, I happily, well, not happily, I will admit that 97's more than, like Wes Boss has a really great ES6 course that he just released, and if I load that, you will see that the price is a bit lower than what I've got going on for mine. So his is only $57 for the starter course, and then $69 for 19 modules. Well, the difference here is that WebdriverIO is super niche, so I'm not going to sell it to 2,000 people. There's just no way. I mean, he sold, what, 4,000 of these. Oh, I do want to buy it. I just don't have the money right now. He sold a bunch of these. He's got a huge audience. WebdriverIO, not as big of an audience. So if I'm going to be able to keep producing these, I've got to have a little bit higher cost per the course, just because that's the way the math works out. Unless everybody wants to get 4,000 people to pay, then I'll definitely consider knocking the price down to. I'll even do $50 instead of $69. But at least until it's finished, which I'm going to keep working on a lot in the next few days or the next few weeks. It's going to be at $97 for the near term. So grab it if you're interested in that. Okay. That's that. I don't know what I'm going to talk about next week. Maybe I'll jump into some alternatives to WebDriver CSS, because there are some alternatives out there. Maybe I'll jump into Selector and show you how you can use that, because that was a lot of fun that I've gotten into, and hopefully I'll get the file uploads. working. Thanks for hanging out. If you did hang out, I appreciate it, and see y'all next week.